Roxanne, first of all, was a really fun character to play. She's a woman who was born and grew up in severe poverty in the Philippines, and she's managed to work very, very hard to make a life for herself in Sydney. She's passionate, she's tenacious, she's really hardworking, she's very, very devoted to her family and her career. Yeah, she's very well off now, but she'll never forget her roots and just what it was like to be very poor. It's going to be interesting, I think, for audiences to see these women on screen. I think especially in regards to Roxanne, she's definitely doesn't kowtow to her husband. She's very career-oriented, as well as being a homemaker, as well as looking after her children. She's very focused on doing what she wants to do. She's very goal-oriented. I feel like that dispels a lot of myths about Filipino women in general. Growing up, I didn't really see Filipinos represented at all. And I think it's really important and relevant because television especially continues to be like a very influential medium for society. And I think that so many people are still influenced by what they watch on television. And in the past, the Filipino identity and culture in a narrative context has not been portrayed on Australian screens. For people who don't know a lot about Filipino culture, they will be surprised when they watch this show in that, like, seeing women that are like strong and independent, and it will dispel that myth of, Filipino women being like quite meek and almost subservient in some ways. So Roxanne grew up in very, very poor in the slums of Manila, and certainly that was not my experience growing up, but I was one of 10 kids and we were a new immigrants to Australia. And, we always went to St. Vinny's. We always had second or third hand clothes. The food wasn't necessarily very, abundant in vegetables and, seafood and, the more expensive items you get from the supermarket. And I wasn't even really aware of that until going to primary school and being like, a lot of my friends have pools and a lot of them have like all the best new toys and things like that. The family unit it comes first and foremost in a lot of Filipinos' lives. And then work, and then, hanging out with your friends. Yeah, and a lot of families have like multi-families living with them. So the grandparent and Lola and Lola will move in, or, you share houses and you're always supporting the family, I feel. If I didn't have my family, if like knock wood, something happened to them all tomorrow, I would be an empty vessel. Like it would just be complete devastation. And going back to the Philippines, my dad lives in like a small barangay, like a little village, and there's still people hanging out the front. It's very rural, and just that sense of community with the family. It's so important. When they see aspects of the show that show like Filipino culture and especially like family and all that sort of stuff, they, some people will be like, oh wow, that's amazing. We had no idea that was such an important part of the Filipino experience. The way that Filipino women are portrayed in this series is unlike anything that's probably been seen on television before. And I just feel like this is a very, more of an honest and raw depiction of a lot of the reality for Filipino Australians in Australia. The way the women are portrayed, it's mind-blowing, because you've never seen anything like it. And I think audiences in Australia especially are going to be really surprised and just this is so good that we get to see this insider view and to how like a lot of real Filipinos are.